Travis Collier is writing books on transition while he's still in the Coast Guard to help veterans make a successful transition into the civilian sector. Up next on episode 127 of Veteran on the Move.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that JOB trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
Grow your brand and business speaking directly to your ideal customers as a podcast guest. Imagine being in the ear of your ideal customer. That's what being a podcast guest can do for you and your business. Interview Valet is the concierge-level podcast guest booking service, providing the fastest way for executives, businesses, and thought leaders to maximize the benefits of podcasting. Their premium hands-free solution takes care of everything but the speaking to reach your ideal audience with the least amount of snags or hassle. Interview Valet's all-inclusive system empowers clients with interview preparation, certified guest training, and personalized attention that ensures you, the podcast guest, the best experience in the podcast industry. Check out Interview Valet at veteranonthemove.com/valet. The top 7 paths to freedom is my free gift to you for listening to the show, featuring 7 great ways for a veteran to take their first step into the exciting world of entrepreneurship. To receive your free gift, go to veteranonthemove.com, or if you're listening on a mobile device, you can text the word veteran to 38470. Travis Collier has spent his career immersed in the Coast Guard's military training system. He holds a master's in Instructional and Performance Technology from Boise State University, has trained over 650 foreign nationals in 19 nations, led 3 of the U.S. Coast Guard's apprentice training programs, including the culinary training program, and helped develop small boat engineering and coxswain training programs for the Republic of Georgia Coast Guard. Travis recently returned from deployment to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where he developed a comprehensive training system to help the kingdom train and equip a new 5,000-soldier critical infrastructure protection force. Travis is currently a Port State Control Officer stationed in the Port of New Orleans. All right, Travis Collier, welcome to Veteran on the Move. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about your book, Command Your Transition. But before we get into talking about that, take us back a little ways and tell us what you've been doing in the Coast Guard.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Really, thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. I am a 15-year Coast Guard officer. I am actually in front of the O5 panel now with fingers crossed to see if I'm selected for O5. I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy in 2001, homecomings in October, and then I went afloat in New Jersey for 2 years, right around 9/11. The service changed phenomenally before and after 9/11. Before 9/11, we were struggling to get all the funding we needed to operate, and after 9/11, really the world changed for us literally in one day. From New Jersey, I was stationed in Virginia at the Coast Guard's International Training Division, where we go and do MTTs, mobile training teams overseas. I went to see 19 countries. I was gone forever, loved it. Went from there to Corpus Christi, Texas, to be what we call a marine inspector. So the Coast Guard is charged with commercial vessel safety of all foreign and domestic craft that carry cargo or passengers. And that's my primary special, my primary MOS. So from Corpus, I went to grad school, Boise State, go Broncos, where I got my master's degree in performance technology. So imagine a master's degree in organizational corporate consulting and instructional design, and that's my master's degree. From there, I went to our West Coast Training Center in Petaluma, California, where I got to lead 3 of our MOS apprenticeship programs. And then I went on deployment from 2014 to 2015 to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, one of only 20 coasts in the country, chance of a lifetime, loved it. And then from there, I am now a Port State Control Officer and a Marine Inspector again in the Port of New Orleans.
The Port of New Orleans, NOLA. Yep. We were talking before we hit the record button. I've spent my fair share of time down in NOLA. Yeah, it holds a special place in my heart.
Awesome. It really is an amazing place.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a great time. I mean, of course, it's a great party town, but I was telling you earlier, it's like when somebody would get stationed in New Orleans, they'd cry when they first showed up, and then 3 years later, they'd cry when they left.
I couldn't get house hunting before I redeployed, so I picked a spot on the chart, and I live 5 blocks from Bourbon Street, upriver, and I'm rarely on Bourbon Street. But you're right, like you come here, like you think it's what you see on TV, but then you realize there's this mesh of 200 years of history, that it's still pretty raw, it's still pretty open. Everyone has this artistic flavor to them. Everyone does something else, and it's just a really amazing place to be in.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique place. There's nothing else like it, that's for sure. So, of course, Mardi Gras and all that fuels it. But all right, so have you written a book before? Because you've got your book, Command Your Transition, and you haven't transitioned out of the Coast Guard yet, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I haven't. I originally, so this is my second book. I wrote my first book on deployment. The title's called Scale. Refuse to settle, recognize what matters, redefine success. And I wrote that book. You'll laugh. Have you ever heard of Santorini, the Greek island that has the most picturesque sunsets in the world, top 10 honeymoon destination?
Yeah.
That's where I wrote my book.
Ah. So it's quite inspiring being there, huh?
It was very inspiring. It was my mid-deployment leave. I got there like the end of January. I was there for 2 weeks. I took my whole leave to go to Santorini to write my book, Scale, the first book. And that came out in April of 2014. I redeployed back to America, picked up my car in LA, started driving back cross country. And based on my experiences in Saudi, my experiences in my career before that, that apocryphal, that year 9 and year 11 moment that I talk about in the book, it just started coming together to where I found this character that I wrote about who was a 9-year Navy petty officer who was choosing to get out and wasn't sure how, wasn't sure why. And I felt like we get so many tools and tactics, but we don't get a lot of experience with the strategy of transition. That's kind of what I wrote about when I came back.
Yeah, and there's, of course, the military's throwing a lot of money at the whole concept of transition, and everybody's got the mandatory transition classes that you have to go through and all that, But the fact is, a lot of those courses they're not taught by people that have lived it and experienced it. They're taught by people that get the contract or people that got hired for the GS job to run it. There's a lot, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really good stuff in all those transition classes. And when I was going through the mandatory transition classes at Fort Leavenworth with the Army side of things, I was like a couple of days into it, and they mentioned something about like an entrepreneurship 3-day workshop. And I'm like, wait, what? What'd you just say? So it's like, that was like the one golden nugget that I found going through the whole course was, there was another course called the Entrepreneurship 3-day workshop. And I signed up for that and went to that. And my experience with that was, I'm not sure if I really learned a whole lot, but it was the first time I was in the room with a bunch of other military people that all wanted to be entrepreneurs. It was like I was surrounded by my own tribe.
Yes.
And that was invaluable experience for me.
Yes. Absolutely.
So your first book, you actually took 2 weeks leave and you knocked out your first book sitting on a beautiful island in the Med, and knocked it out.
I did, and it was completely on time. It was impressive. I didn't plan it that way. A friend of mine published with this publisher, The Difference Press, Angela Lawyer. She's amazing. And December 1st, 2014, I was in Jeddah, the west coast of Saudi Arabia. We had a conversation. We talked for about 2 hours, and then I realized, it's time to do it, and this is the time I have to do it. And so it just timed perfectly that I could go on leave, write the book, come back, and publish it while I was in Saudi. For me, we talk about entrepreneurship. For me, I wrote the first book to prove I could write the first book. And I'll be a little brief. I know, right? Like I didn't believe I could do it. And I've had all of these drafts and ideas and plots and stuff that I just never turned to on. So with Scale, I got the original idea for Scale from being in Hollywood before I left. I was at the Starbucks on Sunset in La Brea, and I was sitting there one morning, And I was shocked by the people who were in the room who were happy being the aspiring class. They were happy being the aspiring screenwriter. They were happy being the aspiring actor. You could tell they weren't even B-listers or D-listers. You could tell they had all the scripts around them, all the stuff around them. I saw them there over the course of a few days, but you could also tell that they didn't have the energy around them to prioritize and execute and move. So that's where Scale came from. I wrote it. I did it to prove to myself that I could do something. I wanted to do a coaching program around that. I didn't because I was afraid. Honestly, deathly afraid. And like you talked about finding entrepreneurs of your own vein in your TAPS class, no one in the military talks about sales on the outside. And the whole transition process is about selling, not in some sort of sleazy used car dealership kind of way, but in a legitimate, here's who you are, here's your service, here's what service means to you. How do you match that to an employer or a potential mate or a community that will resonate?
Wow. I mean, that's great stuff. So, I mean, here you are, you're still in the Coast Guard.
Yes.
And you said, okay, that's why I wrote the book Scale. But I mean, what was your true, there's obviously something more to it than, well, I just wanted to prove I could write a book. I mean, what was your actual purpose? What was your mission in life? And what were you hoping to accomplish by writing a book?
I was really hoping to accomplish I could get a coaching program off the ground and running. And
really, so you wrote the book to establish yourself as an authority in that space, so you could start a coaching program.
Exactly.
And then after you wrote the book, you never did the coaching program because you chickened out.
Yes.
Trust me, I've heard this story many times before. So
yes.
I love that, man. Well, it's good that you admitted it.
Yeah,
because we all run into the same thing.
Absolutely. And I had all the excuses. I was still in Saudi, but Saudi Arabia, 4G internet was $30 a month, unlimited. So that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
I was 7 hours ahead of the East Coast. Well, that's not an excuse. Like, I had all these excuses built in that I didn't confront with Scale. And I realized I have to be the result that my clients are looking for in order for my clients to find me. And that's just, be the ideal client will be the ideal solution too. And that's been my biggest change from book 1 to book 2. The other change, and I'll be quick, with Command Your Transition was I wrote Command Your Transition believing that I would retire early from the Coast Guard. We've had early retirement authorized by Congress for 3 years now, and I really thought I'd be a prime candidate for early retirement. I'm an 04. I'm at the 15-year mark. I've got an okay career path, but I'm not a stellar career path. I made some choices in my career that put me on my path right now, and I'm happy with them. And I thought, well, why not write the plan I'm going to use to make it on the outside and help other people with it? This year, though, early retirement, though authorized, has not been approved by the Commandant of the Coast Guard. So there is an opening for a few officers, but that opening has not been activated by personnel command. So I'm pretty sure now I'll be in until 2021. So I've got the book, and now my perspective changes a little bit, but I still feel wholeheartedly, and I've heard it on your podcast a few times too, from whether it's T.A. Summers or Forrest or many others, transition, it is a part-time job. You've got to do the investment in it upfront, and you have to be honest with yourself. And whether or not I retire in 18 months or 48 months, it's still the same journey.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing about the military and transition. Civilians go through transition all the time, but the difference is in the civilian world, everyone kind of thinks, or they don't think about transition because they're not anticipating it. In the military, everybody's going to transition at some point.
Yep.
I mean, even the Commandant of the Coast Guard, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Chief of Staff, they're all going to transition at some point. Whether a 4-year enlistment or a 35-year career, it's still a transition. And
absolutely.
And transition is very personal. It's like real estate's local. Transition is personal. Every transition is different. It's because it depends on the individual and their circumstances and family and goals and desires and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So tell us about what does Command Your Transition do for the military veteran?
The first thing that Command Your Transition does is it talks about those goals and desires that you speak of. I believe service is who we are, not what we do, period. I believe all of us make a choice to wear the uniform for service and respect. And we could talk about other, having a job, getting out of the region of the country, seeing the world. But at the end of the day, it's about service and respect. I wrote the book for that 10-year gate where people are choosing 10 for 20. Do you stay in that 10 years to make retirement eligibility, or do you walk away? It's a huge gate. And we never hear people saying they're going to walk away at 12, 14, or 17 years because retirement is such a enormous benefit to not walk away from. So I wrote the book thinking about that, but also thinking about, well, if someone wants to make that transition, are they honest with themselves about why they want to make that transition? Are they honest with themselves about why they chose to serve? Are they honest with how they could continue to serve as civilian and CivDiv? So the first thing Command Your Transition does is it puts you in the mindset of declaring your intent. What is your why? And, a lot of the tools we go through, I went through TAPS in late 2012. It was an amazing course for me, but at the end of the day, I was stuck not knowing my why for being on the outside. And so the first part of the book is about doing that. First of all, getting right with getting out. It's a really powerful, onerous, I say OSIM from a mentor of mine, and I won't use the profanity here. It's a significant emotional moment, like you said, that most people, the majority, the 99% of the country will never experience. So first things first, get right with getting out, have a line of sight, and then take a stance. One of the most important quotes in the book I got from an author named Sebastian Marshall. And he said, "A captain, not a general, not a king." That's the quote. And I'm at an 04. I'm on 04. I know now the friends of mine who, if they choose to stay in, will probably make 06. I know the friends of mine, if they choose to stay in, they get the right commands, have the best shot at 07 at flag and flag officer. I know the friends of mine who are choosing to get out to go work inside the Beltway to be SESs and executives in the government. I'm none of them, and I'm okay with that. However, I believe we can each choose to be pardon the cliche, a captain of industry, or a captain of a path, or a captain of a choice, or a captain of a career, or a captain of a company. Be a CEO. You could be a CEO. Choose to be a CEO. So the first part of the book is about declaring your intent. The second part of the book is about crafting your mission. And I really believe while you're in the uniform, once you've made the choice to get out, you have to live within that choice physically and viscerally as much as possible to make sure that choice is right. So, for example, I went to Austin for a week in July to practice improv to see whether or not I could survive as an improv actor in Hollywood. Like, I lived as an improv actor. I performed every night for 5 nights, had shows, 8 hours of practice a day, boot camp style. It was tough stuff. And I did that so I could see if I could live in that space. I was crafting my mission. The other part about crafting your mission, which is important, is about anchoring your platform. So I love, platforms like what you have here, Joe, where veterans are playing and experimenting with how can they best present and represent themselves, and how they can best present themselves in garnering social capital, social currency. That's a huge part of what we miss when we get out, is that our social capital is all tied to being inside the military. And if you don't take the effort yourself to build social capital on the outside, then it becomes a heavier lift. And then the third part is really make it on the outside. When you lose such a fundamental anchor to your identity, when you lose what could be your singular extrinsic factor for respect, you can feel guilty for doing that. You can feel guilty for making that choice, for being separate from your squad mates, your platoon mates. There's a life on the outside, and there's an arena for the life on the outside. And we see the life, but a lot of times we don't see the arena. And it's a dip to go through to be a civilian and not have the level of the mesh, I would say, that we have on the inside. I mean, wherever we get transferred to, like we were talking about New Orleans, like you come somewhere, instantly 30, 50, 100 people, your command, who you serve with, you've got a home, you've got this mesh that you've always had. Well, the day after you leave, that mesh is gone. It evaporates. So what else is there to help you bounce back? So that's kind of what part 3 is about. How do you make it on the outside? How do you look back? How do you reach out and help others who also want to make that journey? And how do you move on when it's time to move on?
Well, I mean, you went through several very key steps and actually issues and problems that most veterans experience when they do transition out. You put it in a very eloquent way, because the fact is, whatever you've done in the military, when you get out, I mean, that's a lot of the problem is a lot of guys don't realize what's about to happen. I mean, they don't realize how much of your identity and respect and pride is tied up in the fact that you're in the military. And when you get out, you're no longer that. And if that's the case, then who are you? Mm-hmm. And what are you? It's almost
Absolutely.
Like you start all over again. And then you keep saying, well, I used to be. Yeah, well, sometimes on the civilian world, people don't care. That's great. Come on down. But what can you do for me now?
Absolutely.
And so the more you're aware of that and the more you prepare yourself for that, the smoother things will go. But yeah, there's really, I mean, some very eloquent ways to put all that. And I loved what you talked about with social capital, because I mean, regardless of what rank you are, I mean, if you're Lance Corporal and you're a fire team leader, you've got, it might be social capital just within your own fire team and within your own squad, but that's really, really big social capital. I mean, it affects you every day in what you do. And then all of a sudden, boom, a year later, you're out and you've got no social capital whatsoever because those guys aren't around anymore. Right.
Absolutely. I just blogged about it. I wrote about it a couple of days ago. I never thought, it's networking is like one of those verboten terms that we talk about, but we see it in the military. We see the networks of people and how they work, how they promote, how they advance, how they assign. But when you leave the military, that mechanism, you don't see that on the outside. I was always shocked being stationed in the Bay Area, how that $1 billion tech CEO wore the same cutoff jeans and T-shirt as the homeless guy in Dolores Park, because those signals are gone. They just don't exist. So yeah, social capital is this idea that you don't know who's in the room. You can't size people up in the room, but it's your ability. It's a currency. It's money, but in a monetary sense. It's a unit of exchange. It's what network can you create for yourself? And I talk specifically about what network can you create for yourself to be on the outside. If you have a community of people working with you, for you, supporting you to transition, you're going to have a better victory than you are if it's just by yourself the day after you put the uniform away. And it's a huge shift. Like no one on the inside talks about, and I sometimes I feel kind of weird talking about it. I don't talk about it at work, but people see me on the outside and they're like, wait a minute, you do this and that. I'm like, yeah, I do this and that, because for me as a leader, for me as an officer, I feel inadequate if I don't prepare people to be on the outside, whether they're in or not. I just don't feel like I'm fulfilling my duties or my commission. So it really hits me home, hits you a lot. And right. I'm rambling. I apologize for rambling. But yeah, social capital it's the currency that is not in the bank account the day a lot of people get out. It's a currency that we have to build to succeed.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about what you're experiencing still being on active duty and talking about getting out or doing things on the outside already and people questioning that. But I also wanted to mention that why does the military pour millions and millions of dollars into these transition programs? And then this is just Joe Crane talking. The reason why is the best recruiting tool for the entire military is somebody who's served successfully, got out, and became a success, school, job, career-wise, whatever, after they got out. And they bump into somebody out in town and they say, yeah, I was in the military and it was the best thing ever and this is where I'm at now. that's the best recruiting tool that the military can have, is a successful military career, even if it's just a few years. Get out, got my degree, or got a job. Now I'm doing this. Now I talk fondly of the military because I had a great transition. That's why we spend millions of dollars helping veterans transition successfully. I also wanted to mention what you talked about with people that are still in with you, and they're serving with you, and they see these things you're doing on the outside. And in some cases they're jealous that you're able to do those things. In some cases they're resentful that you're doing it and they're not able to do it. And in some cases, people just actually have a big aversion to anybody that's in the military doing anything outside the military while they're still in. And some of that is justified, because obviously some of the things in the military we do probably require an all-in mentality if you're going to do it right, and it's serious business. But there's nothing more successful. No better recruiting tool for the military than somebody who transitions successfully. And if transitioning successfully for you means getting a business off the ground, writing some books, getting your writing career off the ground before you get out, then that's what you need to do, and you have every right to be doing that.
Absolutely, full agreement.
So, the Command Your Transition book, has it already come out? Have you already published it?
Yes, it's been out since April. So I published 2 books exactly 1 year to the day. April, I think 14th. The 14th is when Scale came out, and then Command Your Transition came out, I think April 14th of 2016. So I never thought 2 years ago I would publish 2 books in a year, and I've done that. But yeah, it's been out since April. It's doing really well. It keeps bouncing around on Amazon. If someone's bought it, please put a review up. I love reviews. Thank you very much. Love you forever. And it's still doing pretty good.
That's great. So now you've started a trend. That means you're going to publish another one next April?
Funny. I promised myself.
Gotta keep it
I know,
going.
right? I went to Srini Rao, Unmistakable Creative. He had his first live event 2 years ago, and I promised myself at that live event that I would publish a book a year for 7 years. So ideally, the day I retire, I'll have 7 books to my name that are written and published. So I never thought.
So you have committed
I
to
have
it.
committed to it. And I never thought about how that would happen. I just said it would happen. And I've got book 3 in mind. It's a fanfic Star Wars piece, but it works for me because I want to learn how to write fiction. And I want to learn how to write fiction in kind of a supported environment. So it's a little different for me, and I like it a lot. I do want to write a book about New Orleans, but one thing I'm always afraid of is how the book or how characters change the writer. You know, you think about Holden Caulfield. How did Holden Caulfield change J.D. Salinger? How did all of F. Scott Fitzgerald's characters change him? How did Steinbeck get changed to East of Eden? Like, how did Shakespeare get transformed through the myriad of characters he wrote over the years? So I'm a little afraid about writing about New Orleans. So I'm not sure what part of me will come out through the characters and writing about New Orleans. But definitely, I know, right?
You afraid you might like turn into a local New Orleans native? Or what?
Well, it's just like, there's so many types of New Orleans natives. There's the uptown, there's the downtown, there's the quarter, there's the off quarter, there's the Marigny, there's the Frenchman, there's the burbs, there's the bayou. There's so many flavors of natives that I just don't know which one is best me.
Wow, the problems of a writer. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
All right, well, so Travis, we're getting close to the end of our time here. I would like to give you the last word, where we can find your books at.
Sure.
I used to put, anytime I had somebody on that wrote a book, I used to put my the Amazon link in the show notes. But like Amazon gives you like, Amazon Associates account gives you like 6 months to sell something. Yep. And if you don't sell anything, they just cut you off. And I got cut off like twice, I think. And I'm like, all right, whatever. But
I'm sorry.
So that's all right. But I was mainly just putting, I wouldn't, it's not like I'm trying to make a lot of money off other people's books, but I was just putting my affiliate link for people's books in the show notes, because if they wanted to go buy it, it made it easy for them. But I guess nobody ever bought a book. But again, Veteran on the Move, I don't have a lot of, I don't specialize in having authors on the podcast. It's all about veterans and entrepreneurship.
True.
So there's not a whole lot of books I'm promoting. But so how do we find both of your books? And I will give you the last word on if you're talking to somebody that's still in the military or getting ready to transition, looking to do, whether it's they want to write a book or whether it's they want to start their own business and get into this entrepreneurship game. What advice would you have for them?
Joe, some of the best advice I've heard in the last few episodes of the podcast. Start now. The simplest way we've always seen entrepreneurship in uniform are people. One of my mentors, Joe Herodor, great guy, 05. He's almost at 30 years. He owns 4 homes and he has 4 children. They're all grown. But his idea was that, he could pass on a home to each one of his children as he gets older. And I thought about it, like, that's the win, to be a veteran who transfers half a dozen duty stations and have 3 or 4 or 5 homes. By the time you're 55 or 60, those homes are paid off. Like, you've done the same thing that we do as entrepreneurs. So we've seen it. We just need to see more examples of it. And I believe every veteran can be an example of it as well. So start now. Start small. Start a t-shirt company, write a book, help others, start a community group, do a nonprofit. Start now. That way, when you get to your last day, you've created something immense that will be as pivotal and equal to you in respect to identity as the uniform has been to you. And you can find my book on Amazon, Command Your Transition, Declare Your Intent, Craft Your Mission, Make It on the Outside. I love the subtitle. I am very active on LinkedIn. That's probably the primary place to find me. I'm also on Facebook too, but I made the mistake of doing Facebook, and the conversation about transition is not on Facebook. It's on LinkedIn, and it's very, very, very positive on LinkedIn. I am tempted to go into the podcasting space. I think I'm going to launch a podcast on Veterans Day this year. I'm giving myself a time to get ready to run it out there. And I might start a webinar series too about virtual transition training that goes over the principles of the book in more detail.
Outstanding, Travis. All right. Well, I recommend you go find Travis's book and find him on LinkedIn. What's the easiest way? I guess we can find you on LinkedIn. And I agree with you on the LinkedIn. I mean, if you're, as far as transition and business and entrepreneurship and connecting with other veterans in the job space and job search, that kind of thing. Yeah. LinkedIn is definitely the way to go. It's the best one that I've found so far.
Absolutely.
Branch out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's all business.
Yeah. LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm playing with Snapchat right now because the 25 to 28 crowd uses Snapchat to talk and have conversations. So I'm there as well.
That's right. I agree with you. I'm not on Snapchat, but I'd like to get there soon. Definitely where it's at with the certain age groups.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, Travis, I appreciate you sharing your veteran entrepreneurial success story. Look forward to seeing your success in the near future, and whether you end up staying in the Coast Guard or staying in or getting out soon. Good luck to you, and thanks for sharing your story.
Joe, thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you for what you do for serving the community.
All right, same to you, man. We are out. As you can tell from listening to the Veteran on the Move podcast, interviews are a great way to tell your story and spread the word about your business. If you would like to get booked as a podcast guest, I recommend Interview Valet. You can check out Interview Valet at veteranonthemove.com/valet. Be sure to check out Thrive15.com, the world's premier online education platform that helps entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs learn how to start or grow a successful business. Start your free 30-day membership by going to Thrive15.com and use the promo code VETERAN. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.